Good afternoon. Welcome to the Corning Museum of Glass and to our conservation lab here at the museum. Today in our series of live streams, we're thinking about racing into the holiday season and making sure that the things on our table look as good as they possibly can. And also when we clean up, making sure they look as good as they possibly can in the future. So we're going to talk about cleaning glass today with a lot of information that is going to be new to me. I'm not going to say that this comment on my cleaning skills at home, but I feel like I'm going to put a lot of good things to use today. So I'd first like to start by introducing you to Steve Koob, who is our chief conservator here at the Corning Museum of Glass, and I'm going to let him introduce his team that he's working with today.
So yeah, hello and welcome. So I'm sitting next to two conservators who are also part of our team here, and this is Astrid van Giffen, who's our associate conservator, and next to her is Lianne Uesato, who's our assistant conservator. And we're going to go through all the issues about how to clean glass, how best to clean glass, how to take care of your glass in both in preparation for, as Troy said, for use, and also for cleaning afterwards. And for those of you who aren't looking from home and just curious about this for caring for your glass for collection purposes, we're going to discuss that as well. So there are many reasons to clean glass. The most basic is glass does get dirty. It gets dirty from use. It gets dirty from being in a dusty, even outdoor environment or indoor environment where there's dust, dirt, pollution. And here's an example of some pieces we had in storage and for over 21 years, which unfortunately didn't have any major seals on the doors, and so things got very dusty and dirty over that. And so after washing, simple washing, this is what they look like. Really quite dramatic. So certainly the first reason for cleaning glass is the aesthetic reason, to make it look really good. And there's two bottles here, again also found in storage. The one here was covered with just dust and a little bit of, hydration, what we call dampness from high humidity. And high humidity tends to attract more dust to an object, and so it often can easily be washed off. So the piece next to it is shown just after washing. There are also good reasons to clean glass, just to care for the glass and for its long-term stability. And this is something that especially we do for the museum collections, because we want our collections to be cared for indefinitely. And same with artists who are really caring for, not artists but collectors who are collecting art glass, but who want to care for their glasses and keep them in good condition, again, for decades or centuries to come. There are some caveats in the sense that things you can do and can't do for cleaning glass. Most glass can be safely cleaned, especially if it's been used in your kitchen or at home. It's been washed before, it certainly can be cleaned. There are glasses, however, that fall out of that category, some of which are which have weathering surfaces that can be washed away, and that's removing some of the original surface. Or as we move to later glasses, and I think this will be discussed more by Lianne, is that modern and contemporary glasses are often not just glass. There's additions to the glass either on the surface, or there are combinations of adhesives in glass, because the sculptures have become so large they can't be produced as one piece of glass, so they're produced as multiple pieces and then glued together. And then we can also find many things added to the surface, from paints to rabbit skin fur to plastics to all kinds of things that artists are now adding to the glass for special effect. And I should mention that enamels on glass, enamels and gilding on glass can also be safely cleaned. These are generally fired on, so they're made with the glass, and so they're not going to be softened or removed or damaged by cleaning just with soap and water. You should be careful, because of course they're a little more sensitive than the glass itself, so of course we tend to use softer materials such as cotton or swabs or small brushes, and Astrid will deal with this after that. I like to tell people also that one of the main reasons we clean glass is because it certainly probably has cigarette smoke on it or nicotine. And I can almost guarantee you that any glass made before 1989 has cigarette smoke on it. So why 1989? A lot of people think, well, maybe that's when the ban came out that you couldn't smoke in restaurants, but it's not true. It was much later. The reason I say 1989 is you could smoke here in the Corning Museum of Glass in the galleries until 1989. There were literally ashtrays at every entrance, and you could walk through with a cigarette or a pipe or a cigar, and it's just the way it was. Times were different back then. And we didn't have glass sealed away and all in cabinets. We had actually some open storage, and so smoke would get literally everywhere, and you can see it on glass, and it washes away very quickly and easily with just soap and water as a thin brown film. So that's another good reason to clean glass, because nicotine is a pollutant. It's not unlike having a piece of glass outside in a heavy traffic area where you're probably going to get car exhaust on your glass as well. Or if you have to clean your windshield, you know very well that the glass does get dirty. One last cautionary tale is not to wash your glass ever in a dishwasher. This is a glass that went through my brother's dishwasher for 10 years because he remembers when he bought it, and he remembers when I took it away. And so it's the worst thing you really can do to glass because it actually damages the glass in 3 ways all at the same time. The hot soap attacks the surface of the glass, and the wet cycle and the drying cycle are not good for the glass. And so this glass is permanently etched. So it's not really going to ever get any better. And we would not polish it because it's too risky to try to polish glass. So that's my introduction, and we're going to move on to the basic simple cleaning of glass with Astrid, who's standing by the sink. And then she's going to start talking also about possible ways of cleaning stubborn stains off of glasses, which requires a little bit of chemistry.
Hi, so I'm just going to show a basic how to clean a glass. So we'll have this glass. So I use, first we have to make up some detergent. So I just use tap water, slightly warmed. And I'll put in just a drop of a clear detergent. So glass doesn't need to smell good or have any kind of colorants in it. So the detergent is just simple, pure and clean, and that's one of the ones we use. So we use at home I would use something like that. Here we use a conservation grade detergent, but something that you can buy from the grocery store, it works just as well. So we have a little bit warm water. Just rinse the glass initially. Dip your paper towel or brush or whatever you use in the soapy water, and
Astrid, I don't mean to interrupt your cleaning, but so you're saying a brush is okay. Is there a certain type of brush that you would use versus one that you would not?
Yes, I will talk about that in just one moment. So then once you've wiped all the surfaces, rinse it again, and then the final step is to rinse it in deionized water. Now if you live in our area, we have really hard water, and so this actually prevents the hard water from forming droplets on your glass. So then you can just set it out to dry. You can also dry it with paper towels. That helps kind of speed up the process, but it's not really necessary.
Can we go back to the deionized water?
Yes.
I'm not sure I would know where to get that.
Yeah, so deionized water you can also use distilled water, which is a little bit easier to find around here. But it's basically water that has ions removed from it. So it's very pure, and it doesn't have things like minerals in it that would form the spots on your glass.
So stay away from mineral water for
Yes.
this.
So if we go back over here, So the glass that I just cleaned was just a plain surface, smooth, so the paper towel worked really well. But if you're working on something like cleaning a piece of cut glass, for example, all those little ridges and that texture on the glass is going to be harder to clean with just a paper towel. I mean, if I wipe it like this, those ridges are not going to get cleaned. So that's when brushes come in really handy. So I have a selection of brushes here. They're all natural hair or synthetic hair, both work. We've wrapped the metal with tape so that it won't scratch the glass. Toothbrushes are actually fantastic for cleaning glass, especially in those little recessed areas. And then we have cotton, like cut up diapers, cloth diapers work really well for either drying or for cleaning instead of the paper towel. So then let me show you some examples of what to do if you do get water spots on your glass. So these pieces right here have some water spots. You're probably familiar with that kind of thing. And with a little bit of vinegar, so this is just 5% vinegar, which is basically what you get at the store, white distilled vinegar. And then you can see that sometimes it takes a little bit of pressure, but it can take those spots right off. So the acid in the vinegar helps to get rid of those minerals that are left after you've dried your glass without rinsing it in deionized water.
So acid good, some of them.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't respond.
Weak acids.
Weak acids, okay.
Yes, yes. And I think Lianne is going to tell you about some other stubborn things to take off of glass.
Okay, so with the holiday season rapidly approaching, I think we've all busted out our Pyrex. And if yours looks anything like mine, it's dirty. So we're going to use the opposite, well, not the opposite, but on the other end of the spectrum, a base.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to clean this. Steve did a blog on this a while back he did a lot of Pyrex cleaning for the Pyrex show we had here a while back. So this is the protocol mentioned in that blog on cleaning Pyrex.
So they can find that on our website?
Yeah,
Mhm.
sure.
Good.
Okay, so what we're going to use is 100% lye. So that's sodium hydroxide and in water. So a few words of caution here, though, because lye is extremely caustic. So I'm going to read it off there so I don't miss anything. It can cause eye burns, skin burns, and should never be ingested or inhaled. So with that in mind, wearing the proper PPE
Yes.
is kind of
Safety
important.
First.
Safety
Yeah.
first, indeed. So glasses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thick rubber gloves. Check.
So that is just standard rubber gloves that people could get at the grocery store?
Yes.
Or
So
kind
like
of keep
dishwashing
you-
gloves.
Oh, because they can protect you from lye then. That's good to know.
Definitely. And because this is the 100% lye in the powder form, you want to always make sure you're adding the lye powder to the water.
Oh, not the other way
Right,
around.
not the other way around.
And you've diluted this down to?
Yes, and the one I'm using here is diluted down to 10%.
Okay, so 10% lye in a water solution. Okay.
Yes, and I'm just going to do a quick spot cleaning. Oh, sorry. So,
I'm anxious to see this because I don't think I have a piece of Pyrex that doesn't have this issue. 'Cause it seems
Yeah, I
like
think
if you
all of
bake
our
with
Pyrex-
it, yeah.
so I'm just going to clean this spot right here.
Oh my gosh, look
And
at
it just
that.
kind of comes right off, and you can see it on my swab a little bit. Just kind of go around. You can.
Wow.
It's kind of slow going, but it's,
It's a lot faster
something-
than using my thumbnail,
something.
which never works.
So it's a much safer technique for cleaning than using an abrasive.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I noticed you haven't mentioned thumbnails yet. That's
Nope.
a cleaning.
No
You
thumbnail.
discourage that, don't you?
Okay.
No Brillo pads on
No
glass.
Brillo
Brillo
pads.
pads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just another word of caution too, if you're using a brush, like for example, if you were just going to go over the whole thing, natural hair bristle brushes like that will dissolve in lye.
Oh, okay.
So you want to use a
makes sense.
synthetic.
Yeah.
And same deal.
That's not what happened to me. I went naturally bald. I didn't touch lye with my head.
Good
So
to
you
know.
know.
Good to know. Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
And you're gonna talk about
that's right. I
other
was gonna
sensitive
talk about
surfaces.
Other sensitive surfaces. So before you actually get to washing a piece of art glass, for example, like say this beautifully hand-painted wine glass, you might want to check.
Oh, I love a googly eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This is sort of a knockoff,
But yeah.
What I would typically check for are things like breaks in the glass, adhesive, little beak, and paint on the surface.
Yeah.
So-
I could see that being a real challenge to
Yeah.
clean.
So
Because those things are not fired on; they're
Oh.
just on the surface.
not always. So I mean, you have some things like enamel that is fired
Yeah.
on, but I guess when in doubt, we
Don't
would say
assume.
to call a conservator.
Okay. Good. Good answer.
And yes, that information can be found on the American Institute for Conservation site.
Okay,
So you
great.
can, well, for American conservators anyway. But if you were just like, well, I'll just give it a try.
Is that a lye solution you just dumped?
No, that's just plain water.
Just plain water,
So
okay.
we'll just wait and see.
Oh, I'm nervous for the googly eye.
I don't know, it might not do it now that everyone's watching, but
It's the way they are.
yeah. You can see that paint coming off it.
Oh.
Oh, there went the nose.
Sorry about your
Okay,
beak.
well.
Oh,
Googly eyes
no.
remain. So
Good.
anyway, just a cautionary
To
tale.
repurpose that. Look
Yeah.
at all the stuff that's coming off of it, though.
Yeah.
And
So-
that's just water.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, so adhesive and paint and all of the things that sometimes get put on glass
mhm.
can easily also come off of glass.
So it's always a good idea to test a little
Mhm.
area if you think that you have, or if you're not sure, if you think it might be an enamel or it might be what we call cold paint, or just paint. Testing a small area would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And outside of the realm of cleaning glass for the kitchen, if you're cleaning art glass or collectible glass, I often get the question of how often do I need to clean the glass? And I have my basic answer for that is what we do here is our policy at the museum is we clean the glass once in its lifetime. Because we're not going to be using the glass. It's not likely to get dirty again. We might get some fingerprints on it. They could be wiped off with a damp towel. It will get dusty. There's no question the glass will get dusty, as we see in many of these things that have been in long-term storage. But that doesn't need to be washed off. It can just be dusted off or it can be vacuumed off. So we're very happy that once we clean the glass, we feel that it's returning it almost to its original pristine condition and that it's stable and that it will last indefinitely.
Is that a post-1989 rule?
That's a post-1989 rule. So yeah, we often clean glass for traveling exhibitions, for exhibition. Also, many glasses that were acquired in our collection went through the flood in 1972, so they got washed by, unfortunately, muddy water, but then they got rewashed to clean them up back to a nice state for exhibition. But there are other glasses that we've acquired since 1972 where we don't know what their background is, what their history is. And so in order to bring them back again to the same baseline, we give them a wash and they go back to storage. One last thing about storage is important for glass. Too low a humidity is not good for glass. Too high a humidity is not good for glass. Fortunately, the ideal temperature and humidity for glass is the human comfort zone. So between 40 and 50% relative humidity is ideal, and temperature can be whatever, again, feels comfortable to you. could be 66 to 74 degrees. It's not going to really matter too much. The humidity is not so good for the glass. High humidity will cause the glass to sweat or attract moisture to itself, and you've probably seen this through condensation and other things, especially on hot summer days when you're drinking that ice cold lemonade outside. And then I think your glass should be, well cared for. I don't think there's any worry about using it. We recommend you use it. We recommend you enjoy it, so keep it out. It's better to be out than wrapped up in a plastic bag and stuck in the basement. So enjoy your glass.
So I just have a list of some, what I might call folk remedies for cleaning glass, and I kind of wanted to present them to you as just to kind of hear some feedback, either why they might work or why and if you want to issue any kind of qualifying statement, you're welcome to do that as well. So I thought this was interesting. You can use powdered lemonade mix in a dishwasher. Put 2 teaspoons in the soap drawer and run the dishwasher through its normal cycle. The ascorbic acid in the mix will brighten up the dishwasher. Thoughts?
Well, I think in that one, there's probably some acid, citric acid, in the lemonade mix, and so that's probably dissolving some of the minerals that are in your water.
So maybe just X the dishwasher part out of that story.
Yeah, I think, vinegar would also work at the same kind of what I showed, to dissolve those minerals from the glass and from what's inside your dishwasher.
Yeah, I would think it's a household consumer product. It would probably be a fairly weak acid, so
Yeah.
that would be safe. Removing melted wax from glass candlesticks. This is from Better Homes and Gardens. Place the glass holders in the freezer for a few hours. The wax should shrink enough to pop right out.
We know it works.
Yeah,
We've tried it.
tried it.
Okay, so that's a method that's been
And I
used.
think in a sense it's safer, not that I like to shock glass, so it's not, my favorite thing is not to put glass in a freezer, but it's probably better than putting it in an oven. And that's how a lot of people tend to remove wax off of glass.
Using heat.
Is using heat. And the lowest temperature your oven registers, I think, is around 170 to 180 degrees. That's way too high for my comfort of putting a piece of glass in there. It means it's too hot to touch, so you're gonna have to, either use hot pads or something, which means, again, you don't have a good feel for the glass. It's likely to slip out of those hot pads while you're trying to remove the last bit of the wax. So I think, a cold cleaning is probably better than a hot cleaning.
And so the mechanism in that one is that the wax is going to shrink in the cold, and the glass doesn't. So that's why
okay.
it's...
And it doesn't have to be a low expansion glass, just regular soda lime glass
Yeah.
would have a different expansion rate. Okay. This is for washing windows. We actually have our share of windows in the collection, so actually I think this is interesting. Wash on a cloudy day, otherwise the sun dries the cleaner before you can wipe it away. Makes some sense. A mixture of 1/4 cup of ammonia and a gallon of water. Use newspapers to dry instead of cloth or paper towels. So a couple of new elements there, ammonia and newspaper.
Again, we haven't mentioned ammonia, and we prefer not to mention ammonia, so we don't ascribe to Windex, which claims it has ammonia. Ammonia is a good cleaner, but it's also been known to react adversely with glass and metals, so I would avoid ammonia at all costs. I think a soapy water, very, very thin solution of soap, or a little bit of alcohol in your water is great for removing some of the kind of oily stains and dust and dirt that you get on windows. Why newspaper? Well, newspaper is interesting. It's actually a pretty clean, cellulose paper. The ink is bound to it, so it's not going to rub off onto your glass, and it's very absorbent. So I think that's the trick to that. And it's also basically lint-free. So if you're using a cotton towel or a diaper, you're probably going to leave little bits of cotton behind on your window, and then it's going to be visible whenever you look at it with, again, sunlight coming through it. So again, the paper towel seems to work really remarkably well to pick up that all the residue from the cleaning and the rinsing. Again, rinsing is also very important, and you can use just regular water or deionized water for that.
Yeah, I actually have some firsthand knowledge cleaning windows with newspaper and vinegar. I cleaned a whole house once that way. And it works, but you need some help. Don't do it by yourself. So this is kind of interesting. Cleaning mirrors, a glob of shaving cream, or an ounce of hydrogen peroxide in warm water. A glob of shaving cream. There's so many different kinds of shaving cream these days.
Because it sticks to the glass? Or why shaving cream?
I'm guessing there's some kind of soapy material in shaving cream.
It is a soap.
And it's some kind of soap. Obviously, I don't use it.
I don't either.
and Troy doesn't either, and neither do they. So, but it's meant to soften your stubble, correct? And if softening your stubble means it's wetting it well, and that's another principle, that if something wets the surface well, it should help clean it better. But the soapy, I think, aspect of it is probably the more important for that. Using hydrogen peroxide, it's a great cleaning agent, but again, it's rather aggressive, and I would certainly avoid using it anywhere you have things like metals and wood, because it could damage that. So remember, your window isn't always just a window. It can have metal fittings or wood around it, and you certainly don't want to get something aggressive in your woodwork, because it's really going to damage the wood.
And I'm wondering too, if there's people have more than plate glass windows in their house, they could have, and we do at our museum, we also have stained glass and then art glass windows. Any advice on, is there any difference in the way you would clean an art glass window versus the way you'd do an art glass vessel?
Well, most windows you can't put in the sink to wash, so that's a pretty big difference.
Good point.
So,
yeah.
Starting out with deionized water might be kind of a way to minimize water getting on the other parts of the glass. And then with stained glass windows, there's also a painted layer, so just to be extra careful with that sometimes.
And then the fittings for around the lead. I'm not sure what reacts with lead, actually.
So no Windex.
Yeah,
No Windex. Okay. Take it off your shopping list, people. Cleaning glass. Stemware. Hand wash with warm, mild, soapy water. Rinse with cool water. Dry with soft linen or 100% cotton hand towel. So you're basically saying no more stemware in the dishwasher ever.
Correct.
If you want to keep it, yes. So
Right.
I will admit that I put my glass in the dishwasher because I don't care. This is just my regular drinking glasses. But if I have some nice
Museum quality
think
glass.
that's-
yes, some
Right.
beautiful pieces like this.
Yes. You have
I
glass
would
with a
not put
beak.
this, yes.
And googly eyes, and think twice.
In general, the dishwashing people assume you're going to break this juice glass long before it gets to this deteriorated state.
Oh, they don't know my family.
Well, I know. But the same thing is true. I did say it's safe to clean enamels and gilding, but again, not in the dishwasher. And I think many people have experienced this, is every time it goes through there, it's getting fainter and fainter, and the lines are just disappearing. And that's because the hot soap and the hot cycles are attacking that surface. So it's going to damage even surface decoration eventually in the dishwasher. And I've talked to many caterers, and they say, "Why are my wine glasses turning cloudy?" And I say, "Why? Because you're running them through an industrial dishwasher, which is even hotter than the one at home, and you're doing it twice a day, and for lunch and for dinner."
You're going to have to build that into their budget.
Yeah, you got to build that into the budget.
Glass replacement.
So they say within a year, they say the glasses are so cloudy that they can't use them.
Wow.
So that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
So I don't think the dishwashing people like us at all. But that's the way it is.
Well, they have their uses, and there's certainly other things to put in a dishwasher. Yeah, I'm always conditioned. We had gold rimmed glasses growing up, and daggers of death would come out of my mother's face whenever she saw me reaching for the dishwasher to put those in there. So I did learn early on not to do that. So any other things that people might not be aware about in terms of cleaning?
Well, not that the general public have chandeliers or candelabra, but they are not one of the easiest things to clean. And there's, I think, a myth about that as well. I've actually read somewhere that you should, for a chandelier, you can just hang an umbrella from the bottom part of the chandelier and then spray it with a hose. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. First off, the umbrella is not going to hold up to a lot of water. And again, you don't want that much water all over everything. To be honest, the only way to do those properly is to take the pieces apart. And if it's a classic baccarat chandelier, it has maybe 600 to 800 pieces.
Wow.
So that's a big job, and it requires more than one person. And each of the pieces need to be cleaned individually, and then laid out to dry. And then you need at least 2 people to reassemble it. So not an easy thing to do.
And that's why I don't have a chandelier.
That's why we don't. Many of us don't have a chandelier.
So I have a few questions from our viewers. How would I clean a gold fumed piece of glass?
I'm not sure what they mean by gold fumed, unless it's, we know of tin chloride fuming, which is made how you make luster glasses. I suspect it's fused to the glass, much like those are as well. And again, they can safely be cleaned by the techniques we've talked about.
So just assume it's like you would an enamel or
Yes.
a heated painted surface.
I mean, just be gentle. You don't want to be using a scrubbing sponge or something really rough to clean, the gilding on a glass. It's going to eventually damage it. But a soft swab or soft cotton toweling should not do any damage whatsoever and should clean it very, very well. So it should be safe to clean. Again, rinsing is really important. We can't emphasize enough how that last rinse with pure water, either deionized or distilled, which you can usually get at a supermarket, just buy a gallon of it. And you're not going to use very much. You just need basically to rinse the surface, and it just gets your glass back to a really beautiful state.
So this is kind of a bizarre question, but I don't, like we were talking about Pyrex, using your fingernail to get gunk off, that's pretty baked on, which I wouldn't do with a glass like that. But what about fingertips versus a cotton rag? I mean, is there any, like sometimes I feel like if there's like stuff on the glass that would better come off if I just rub my finger on it with some soap and water. Is that safe?
As long as you're not being really rough with it, and if it's just a plain glass surface, then it's not gonna, your fingernail isn't strong enough that it's gonna hurt the glass.
Okay.
But I was gonna say with the fumed gold, if you're not sure what it's gonna do, test a little area. So just take a little water on a swab and find either an area on the bottom or in the back or in a corner somewhere where it's kind of hidden away, just to make sure that it's not going to hurt your surface.
Or call a conservator. Maybe.
Or call a conservator.
Yeah. Yes. How do you clean incredibly large pieces of glass? We kind of talked about that. I mean, there are larger pieces of glass than chandeliers, so.
I think Leanne's had
Like
more.
I'm thinking
boy.
of, we have
Leanne's had more experience than any of us with
the Larry
this.
Bell that's up in the
The Larry
galleries right
Bell.
now.
We do, so kind of in that whole thing about not putting too many chemicals on the glass. So things that we can't wash off, or things that we can't wash, basically, we wouldn't put, a bunch of soap on. So we would use probably a 10% alcohol and water solution. So the water will evaporate a little quicker with that little bit of alcohol.
Okay.
So if most things come off with that, just general dust and grime. But
Speaking of dust, what do you dust with? Do you just dust sometimes? I mean,
Yes, we do.
yeah.
Kind of a soft bristle brush, usually with a vacuum cleaner following it,
Okay.
so that we're not just into the air.
I would love one of those myself at home. For sure I do not. So,
Well, a PVA adhesive is basically like Elmer's glue.
oh, okay.
So
So
So-
don't
Don't
go in
do
water.
that.
That's what will
See
happen.
the lesson of the beak.
Yeah. So that would be a case where you want to do a more dry cleaning of the piece. So if you can get away with just dusting, that's great. If it needs a little more, you could spot clean. You can use the water and 10% and kind of avoid the area where the adhesive is.
Fair. Is there any specific technique for cleaning Steuben glass? Or do all these things apply?
No, I mean, Steuben is pretty straightforward. It's usually doesn't have anything on the surface. It's just glass. So just a basic washing with a little bit of soapy water, warm water, rinsed and with deionized water and try it. So
One cautionary thing about if they're thinking of the what we call the old Steuben or Steuben crystal, which is a lead crystal, it is a different glass than your most common tablewares and your windows, which Troy mentioned earlier, which is a soda lime silica glass. But so lead glasses with that slightly different composition are actually a softer glass. That's why they're often cut into decanters and tableware that are beautiful. But that means that surface of the glass is softer. And that's one of the reasons we have a plastic sink. Actually, I'm very proud of our plastic sink. I don't know of another conservation lab in this country that has a plastic sink. It's not going to prevent a glass or a Venetian goblet from breaking if you drop it in the sink, but it will prevent scratching the glass. Whereas a stone sink or a metal sink, if you rub it against the side, it will scratch a piece of lead crystal. So it would scratch a piece of Steuben. So if you're thinking of cleaning your Steuben in the sink, take a plastic bucket or put a mat down in the bottom of the sink so that the glass isn't going to be scratching the bottom of the sink or the sides of the sink. Try to avoid the sides of the sink. And then again, the techniques we've talked about are the same.
That's actually a pretty good tip just for the holidays. If you know you're going to be using all of your glass, for a special meal or several meals, then finding a nice large plastic tub to wash in and might be a good vacation from the metal sink. So, any last words at this point? Advice?
well, actually, having this decanter in front of me reminded me of something. So when you wash a decanter like this, obviously you take the stopper out, but often water will, it can be difficult to get the water out. So if you lay it on its side,
After washing?
washing it, the water will pool down in the bottom and you can pour it out easier like that.
So, don't just sand it up on its neck
Yeah.
like that, which is what I would normally do.
Yeah.
That just
That,
gets.
that gets some of it out, but it won't.
But you'll get more if you
you'll
lay
get
it on
more
its
if you lay it
side
out.
and let it
'Cause it
pool
tends to
in
pool
the
down.
bottom and then pour it out
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about this is that sometimes a shape with a constricted neck like this, to get the last little bit of moisture out, we'll put in a few drops of acetone to help that evaporate.
That would
And
be
when
good
you put
to
it-
know for perfume bottles.
And when you're all done with it, and you put it back in the cupboard, leave the stopper off. If you put the stopper in and there's still a few drops of water in there, the environment inside will get very, very humid and it can actually attack the glass. So.
Water is the enemy of glass.
Yes.
Water is the friend and
Is
and
friend
Friend
and
and
enemy.
friend and
Frenemies.
enemy.
Yes.
They are glass and water.
And we're hoping to do a live stream about how water attacks glass at a later
Sounds
time.
dramatic.
It does.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll look forward to that. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you all for joining us again. And we'll look forward to seeing you. Well, you seeing us, and hopefully you giving us comments and questions in the future. So, thank you very much.